All right then. So, hello, Sublation Media viewers and future readers. It's me again, Douglas Lain. And this week, instead of a Critical Cuts video, I'm just going to talk to you about Guy Debord's book, Society of the Spectacle, and what I'm finding when I read it backwards. I've got a script here in front of me, but I'm going to just try to kind of talk off the cuff as well. This week's episode, our video essay was going to be about Chapter 4 in Debord's book, which is translated as A Proletariat in Representation. If you read it in online at Ken Knobb's website, and as The Proletariat as Subject in Representation in the 1977 Black and Red edition. And it's a long chapter. It's a long chapter. There's a lot of critique in the chapter. There's a critique of Hegelian idealism, a critique of techno-utopianism, a critique of Bolshevism, and finally, there's an explanation for why it is that the working class or the proletariat are specifically tasked with realizing and taking responsibility for history. Now, this week I'm just going to start with the latter aim. I'm trying to unpack what I think is a central claim about the proletariat in Debord's chapter. And then next week I'll do a fuller video essay on the chapter. But I think it's worth noting that the claim is not about the relationship workers have to the means of production. It's not about the material power workers deploy and could control, or at least it's not about that exclusively, but rather it's about the consciousness of the workers. That's what Debord is mostly interested in. When the proletariat discovers, this is a quote from Debord. He says, when the proletariat discovers that its own externalized power contributes to the constant reinforcement of capitalist society, no longer only in the form of its alienated labor, but also in the form of the labor unions, political parties, and state powers that it had created in the effort to liberate itself. It also discovers, through concrete historical experience, that it is the class that must totally oppose all rigidified externalizations and all specializations of power. No quantitative amelioration of its impoverishment, no illusory participation in a hierarchized system can provide a lasting cure for the proletariat's dissatisfaction, because the proletariat cannot truly recognize itself in any particular wrong it has suffered, nor in the righting of any particular wrong. It cannot recognize itself even in the righting of many such wrongs, but only in the righting of the absolute wrong of being excluded from any real life. Uh-oh, now I gotta sneeze. So what I want to do now is read a few lines from the 1995 song Common People by the English band Pulp. The song is an imagined response to a girl who tells the lead singer that her father is loaded, that she goes to art school, and that she wants to live like common people. She wants to sleep with common people like him, presumably because this will help her to create more authentic or relevant art. Jarvis Cocker responds to her this way. He sings, "You'll never live like common people. You'll never do whatever common people do. You'll never fail like common people. You'll never watch your life slide out of view. And you dance and drink and screw because there's nothing else to do. Rent a flat above a shop, cut your hair and get a job, smoke some fags and play some pool, pretend you never went to school, but still you'll never get it right. You'll never understand how it feels to live your life with no meaning or control and with nowhere left to go. You're amazed that they exist, and they burn so bright, whilst you can only wonder why. They're like a dog lying in a corner. They will bite you and never warn you. Look out. They'll tear your insides out." So those are just a few lines from the 1995 song. Lines from a song popular with Generation X. We're not so bad. So Debord wrote that the proletariat cannot recognize itself in any particular wrong it has suffered, nor in the righting of any particular wrong. Whereas Jarvis claims that living without meaning, that the common people's failure, their sense that their own life is slipping out of view, makes them dangerous like a dog who will bite. Debord says that the workers will never settle for reformist attempts to solve this or that problem, to put right any given wrong that they have suffered. Instead, the workers' true aim is to gain control of their lives, to take hold of all the different strands that are tripping them up, to alter or destroy the forces that are amassed against them, precisely because they don't see themselves in any given wrong that they have suffered. The working class doesn't identify with its own oppression or with its own exploitation, and this lack of identity with the life they are living through and against is what will eventually move the workers to change the totality of life. Rather than identify with our pain, with the wrongs we've suffered, Debord is claiming that workers will identify with our alienation. Now, I'll be bringing this up again. I'll be returning to this in a fully edited video next week, but I think it's worth considering the difference between identifying with our oppression, with our pain, and with the unfair things that have happened to us, and identifying with our alienation. And to do that, I want to take up a recent excerpt from Norman Finkelstein's book, I'll Burn That Bridge When I Get to It, an excerpt that was published in Sublation magazine, and see what it would mean for a working class movement to try to take on the question of Roe versus Wade or abortion more generally. So in his essay, Finkelstein says that because we can't know whether or not a fetus is alive in the sense that it should be granted rights, the state should allow a woman who is clearly alive to have full bodily autonomy. That is, women should be allowed by the state to have abortions up until the moment of birth. However, Finkelstein says because the fetus might actually constitute a living being who should be accorded rights and may very well be accorded rights in the future when our scientific and moral understanding is more advanced, abortions should come with a severe social stigma. Now, my suspicion is that Debord's workers and Cocker's common people would want nothing to do with Finkelstein's solution. But neither would they be marching in the streets in order to protect the rights granted under Roe. The common person, the one who smokes fags and plays pool, the one who never went to school, would probably amass some of those wrongs that they've suffered and ask some questions. She'd say something like, whether or not I can get an abortion is to the side. Why should I accept a world where every night out, every thrill and backbend comes along with the possibility of increasing my poverty? Why should it be that I can't afford to have a kid? She'd ask, why should it be that a night of in and out, a quick release, is the best time that I can expect? Why can't I seem to plan things out to make sure that things happen in the sequence that I choose? Why do I find myself just grabbing what little bits of pleasure I can find, rather than putting my life together as something meaningful to me? So that's what I imagine that this common working class woman might say. And I imagine that a worker from Debord's world might say that we don't need to stigmatize abortion and that we couldn't anyhow. What are we going to do? Put another priest or minister on television to tell people what's right and wrong? I imagine this worker from Debord's Paris might say that you don't need to stigmatize abortions because she can feel it when someone is living inside her, and that she can feel it when they're gone. All in all, the worker or common person is getting sick of being managed, being granted this or that right or privilege, all while their own and our collective life veers out of control. Anyhow, that's all I've got on Debord and the Society of the Spectacle this week. And next week, I'll try to do better.